Hold on, let me finish.
Stops the flow of the conversation. The taping is the taping. When the doors say on air, that means certain behavior has to cease and work has to continue. It looks like a circus to me. Yeah. Like when my producer, I'll be like, oh, this is.
I hate it.
Right? Y'all mind the scenes, right? Talk to me.
Absolutely hate it.
It's horrible. And sometimes I feel like you just be focused on you. And I don't think that's the get.
Do you feel properly valued by the show? Nah, hell no.
Joe Budden and Ish finally start peeling back the layers on what's really happening behind the scenes. And trust me, this might be one of the most revealing rewinds you'll see in a while. Everything was delivered with laughs, slick smiles, and playful energy on the surface, but you could feel the tension hiding underneath the entire conversation. Like Beanie Siegel once said, your handshake ain't matching your smile. And honestly, that line fit this moment perfectly. One of the biggest things that instantly stood out to me was Ish admitting that the whole B-Dot situation actually shook the cast more than people realized. And when I say the incident, I'm talking about the moment B-Dot stepped in and took issue with C.
See this? Oh, it feel like jail.
Hey, I wouldn't take my man's spot.
Got here first.
B-Dot don't even look like he did.
I've been here for 5 years. I mean,
First of all, it was
At first, the whole situation was being played off like it was just some harmless joke or a little content moment for the cameras. But Ish ended up giving a lot more insight than people expected, revealing that several people on the show were genuinely bothered behind the scenes. And it wasn't just the seat situation that rubbed them the wrong way. They were even more irritated by what they felt was B-Dot taking a full-blown victory lap afterward. So what exactly were they referring to? They were talking about the moment B-Dot jumped into spaces and started clouding Flip over the way he was dressing, and you honestly couldn't ignore the shade in it. And this is where things really started getting messy, because here's exactly what he said.
the worst outfit I've ever seen in my life. That nigga really tried to come for me talking about outfits. Nigga, look like your closet took a shit.
Ish wasn't there. So I've been consistently been there for like the last 3-4 weeks. No, but I just asked him, like, do you want me to sit here or do you want me to sit somewhere else? And Joe seemed indifferent about it. So I was really comfortable and I felt like the podcast Rosa Parks.
I honestly don't understand why B-Dot managed to get under their skin to that level, because if we're being real, there have been way worse situations on that platform. One thing I will say, though, is that B-Dot never crossed certain lines with the cast, the way Lamont Hill allegedly did behind the scenes. The difference is, B-Dot never seemed interested in winning everybody over or forcing relationships with the cast the same way Lamont Hill appeared to. And maybe that right there is exactly what made people uncomfortable, because sometimes honesty hits harder than fake friendliness. To me, it feels like a lot of people completely fell for the setup without even realizing it. B-Dot comes across like the type of person who'll knock on your front door and straight up warn you he's about to rob you, while Lamont Hill is more like the guy who becomes your friend first and quietly watches for opportunities. Then, before you even notice what happened, you're sitting there wondering, wait, where did my PlayStation 5 go? And just when you thought the tension couldn't get any deeper, Mona stepped in with her own issue involving B-Dot, which honestly added even more insight into what was really happening behind the curtain.
I think, was more upset than me. Flip was hot. Mona was hot.
No.
I'm telling you, they was hot. Like, again, nobody in their right mind would think that somebody would do that.
When Mona...
No, seriously, I'm telling you, they were genuinely heated over this whole situation behind the scenes. The energy wasn't fake laughs or podcast theatrics either. People were really upset, and you could hear it in the way they were talking about it afterward. Because honestly, if we're being real for a second, nobody in their right mind would have expected someone to actually pull a move like that.
A little bit, like, not like weird, like little tism. Like, intelligent. This person's more smarter than me, speaks better than me, more education than me. Just a little off. When his brother came on, I felt like he took a couple jabs at like another co-host while we were filming. And it was like, it just came off a little bit mean.
I mean, she went as far as accusing the guy of being autistic. And honestly, that completely took the situation to another level. Then she doubled down even harder by claiming he was bullying Flip, which made the entire thing feel way more personal than people expected. Man, you could tell the cast had a real dislike for this dude, because the tension was practically jumping through the screen at that point. And if you ask me, another reason they seemed so bothered was because B-Dot was making the cast look unorganized and unprofessional when he said,
That is regular. Be professional.
No,
He basically came out and said, "Yo, just show up early, bro, because you were already there way ahead of time anyway." The way he said it sounded simple on the surface, but trust me, there was definitely shade hidden in that comment. And I think that's what really irritated the cast, because it made the whole situation seem less like a serious issue and more like something that could have easily been avoided.
And then the niggas was like, yo, be professional. So we just look like the you know what I'm saying? It's like, no, that wasn't really what took place that particular day.
Now, the drama didn't stop there, because even more interesting moments started unfolding during this episode. One major thing that stood out was Ish basically hinting that he doesn't feel properly appreciated or valued behind the scenes. I know a lot of it gets packaged as jokes and laughs for content, but if you really pay attention, the real message underneath the humor starts becoming obvious. Everybody's getting paid and eating well right now, so naturally people are going to laugh things off and act like everything is cool on the surface. Back in the early Rory and Mal era, though, situations didn't just get brushed aside with jokes, because Joe Budden clearly had frustrations about the business side behind closed doors. No matter what chaos happens with this current version of the podcast, Joe is still positioned to benefit from the profits and overall success of the platform. And that definitely wasn't always the dynamic when Rory and Mal were part of the show. Joe even went as far as joking, or maybe not joking, that he would actually like to fire somebody.
Be honest about something. I want to fire somebody just to do it, like with no reason.
And if you really start digging deeper into this episode, you'll notice there were some pretty outrageous moments involving Ish that almost flew under the radar. At one point, he made this absolutely wild comparison where he basically compared himself to Draymond Green. And trust me, the room reacted exactly how you'd expect.
Comes to work every day, and he does what he does. You it's just Draymond being Draymond, right? But if you took Draymond out and you put somebody else there, you might see like, oh shit, Draymond helps me handle the ball. I don't have to handle the ball as much because he handles the ball.
Now, that's right. Now hold on, because this is where the episode really started getting hilarious. That's right, y'all. Ish genuinely compared himself to Draymond Green, like he was some game-changing glue guy holding everything together behind the scenes. The comparison was so bad that you almost couldn't believe he said it out loud with confidence. He basically tried to explain it by saying, yo, sometimes I make people better. Draymond makes people better, implying that he has that same kind of impact on the show. In his mind, I guess he was trying to say he elevates the people around him, but the delivery completely missed the mark. One thing that became instantly clear, though, was that Joe Budden was absolutely not feeling that comparison at all. Joe looked genuinely offended by it and basically responded like, "What? You are nowhere near Draymond Green." And honestly, I can't even lie, I agreed with Joe on that one. If anything, Ish comes across more like a watered-down version of Rasheed Wallace, or maybe Glenn Robinson. Talented players with flashes of greatness who just don't consistently bring it every single game. Those are the type of guys who will randomly give you 15 points when the team desperately needed 25, then score 25 when all you really needed was 15. That inconsistency is honestly the best way to describe it. Now, another thing that became really interesting during this episode was watching Joe Budden slowly start revealing how he truly feels about certain people on the cast. He even started opening up about the real reason he decided to break up the Newark couch setup behind the scenes.
Are too friendly. They're too friendly. They've known each other too long. They're too comfortable with each other. They love each other too much. So they are laxed. If I toss it to them, find a way to say it or throw it back to me.
Comments probably irritated Joe more than people realized behind the scenes. I'm not saying that's the sole reason she's appearing less, because her ongoing issues with professionalism and constantly showing up late probably played a major role too. It got so noticeable that whenever people pointed out her lateness online, some of her fans would get defensive, even though the criticism was completely visible on camera. At a certain point, you have to be honest with yourself. Consistently arriving 45 minutes late while working on a major production is going to frustrate people no matter who you are. And realistically, she's not viewed as such an irreplaceable talent that everyone is just going to ignore disrespect toward other people's time. So after Joe spent all this time trying to accommodate her, defend her, and be understanding publicly, hearing her criticize the environment probably hit a nerve. I can almost imagine Joe thinking to himself, there's no way she's really saying this after everything that's happened. Because from his perspective, you can't criticize the experience while also failing to make a consistent effort to even show up on time. But anyway, I know I'm going a little off track here because it's been a minute since I dropped one of these breakdown videos. I will say though, dissecting this Rewind episode was actually fascinating because it felt way more transparent than people are giving it credit for. In my opinion, what we're watching is just a watered-down version of the real tensions happening behind closed doors. And the only way to really decode these episodes is by doing deep analysis the way I'm doing right now, because Joe is never going to fully expose everything directly. He's only going to reveal the pieces of information he wants viewers to see, while carefully controlling the overall narrative. One huge example of that is how people noticed that Melissa Ford was literally being cropped out of certain Rewind visuals and edits. You can't tell me that isn't intentional, because that type of editing choice says a lot more than people think. To me, that's proof that Rewind is a carefully manicured version of the real Joe Budden podcast dynamic, instead of a completely honest reflection of what's happening. It honestly reminds me of those old stories about political leaders removing people from photos once relationships went bad, and that comparison feels crazier the more you think about it. At the same time, Rewind is also giving viewers way more material to analyze, because little details keep slipping through the cracks. Before this, they tried to act like the whole Seatgate drama wasn't really serious or worth discussing. But based on what Ish revealed, and Ish usually isn't the type to force fake drama for content, the issue was apparently a massive deal behind the scenes for quite some time. The topic kept resurfacing internally, conversations continued after the camera stopped rolling, and even Mark was reportedly discussing the incident extensively over on Patreon afterward.
Remember when Joe Budden talked about separating Ish and Ice on the couch? Well, during this episode, he finally started giving more context about why he made that decision in the first place. As the conversation kept going, Joe also began sounding genuinely frustrated with what he feels is the cast's lazy approach during recordings. He started calling out little habits that clearly get under his skin, like people constantly getting up during the show to walk around or disappear to the bathroom in the middle of conversations. Joe basically said, "Yo, why are y'all always moving around during the pod? That looks terrible." And honestly, you could tell he was dead serious beneath the jokes. Another thing he openly criticized was how certain cast members suddenly leave their seats whenever a topic comes up that they don't feel comfortable discussing. He even pointed out that this is supposed to be the all-star team of the podcast, so in his eyes, there shouldn't be moments where people are ducking conversations or checking out mentally. Joe mentioned that even his producer Braden gets irritated watching that happen during recordings because it throws the entire energy off. And what made this even more interesting is that Erickson, the guy involved with editing, structuring clips, and helping shape the show behind the scenes, also started speaking up about the issue. Since Erickson rarely inserts himself publicly, that told me this frustration probably goes way deeper behind the curtain than viewers realize. At that point, it felt obvious that not only Joe, but likely people like Ian and others attached to the production are all getting tired of the same repeated problems. Throughout this entire episode, Joe was practically wearing his frustration on his face, and you could clearly see he isn't fully happy with the current direction of the show. But at the same time, as long as the money keeps landing on schedule, everybody seems willing to keep pushing through the tension for now. Still, I want to know what y'all think about Rewind, because it's honestly been interesting watching the audience slowly warm up to the format over time. When Rewind first launched, especially among the Patreon crowd, a lot of people immediately trashed it and acted like the concept was dead on arrival. And to be fair, people paying $25 a month absolutely have the right to criticize the product, because that's real money being spent every single month. In some cases, fans are paying more for Patreon than they pay for services like Netflix, Hulu, or Peacock, so naturally they expect quality content in return. If something feels weak or unfinished at launch, Patreon supporters usually don't wait around politely pretending to like it. Early on, a lot of the reactions were basically, "This is corny, this is boring, this ain't it," and the backlash was loud. But now if you actually read the comments, you'll notice more and more people saying they genuinely look forward to Rewind every week as part of their routine. It's funny because this happens with almost every new podcast spin-off or sideshow. People reject it at first, then suddenly 5 or 10 episodes later, it becomes part of their regular content rotation. Another thing we seriously need to pay attention to is the direction that Joe Budden Podcast seems to be heading overall. For what feels like the first time in a long time, they've started putting major episodes behind a paywall, including episodes that normally would have been released publicly.
The last time fans remember something this drastic was around the Rory and Mal fallout, when key episodes, including the firing discussion and therapy-related content, were locked behind Patreon. So now it feels like the podcast is leaning harder into exclusivity, and Joe himself has openly hinted that the strategy is making him significantly more money. But I do wonder how sponsors like Prize Picks feel when some of the biggest conversations are no longer reaching the larger YouTube audience. YouTube is basically modern television at this point, so if ad reads are getting pushed to Patreon where fewer people watch, that has to raise questions from advertisers eventually. One thing I also couldn't stop noticing during all of this was the absence of Mona because she was nowhere to be seen during the Drake-related episode. And immediately my mind went back to those comments she made about the Joe Budden podcast not really being the best environment for women long-term. To be clear, she didn't frame it like some huge scandal situation, but more like the audience itself doesn't fully embrace women staying on the platform for too long. Still, I can't lie, I feel like those...
See, I didn't agree with it. I didn't like it. I ain't gonna lie to you. I did not. Once that happens, all the opinions are put on the table. You got to make a different choice. At the moment that you knew everybody was serious and you thought Joe was indifferent to it, that's when you get up. I get not wanting to get punked or herbed for the seat, as you put it. I get not wanting to look like you're getting played out or like you the little guy, the new guy that's being treated like a fish. So I get all of that. But at the moment that you realize people just feel a way about it, you should get up. And the thing is, I'm not saying Ish felt the way. I'm saying I felt the way, Mona felt the way, Flip felt the way, Minus felt the way. Everybody who said they felt the way felt the way. I'm not speaking for nobody else. These are people who spoke for themselves.
And by the way,
has anybody else noticed something feels a little different with Mark Lamont Hill lately? Now, I know he missed the last episode because his daughter graduated college, so I'm not trying to jump to wild conclusions or act like there's some major fallout happening behind the scenes. But if you've really been paying attention to the pod, Mark just doesn't seem like the same guy who first came in eager to fit in and prove himself to everybody. These days, it almost feels like he's taken his foot off the gas a bit. And honestly, that's something we've seen happen with a lot of people once they've been on the show long enough. It happened with Flip, and now people are starting to say they see similar energy from Mark, too. But anyway, let me know what you all think about the Ish and Joe Rewind dynamic, because I'm curious where fans stand on it now. Are y'all actually rocking with Rewind at this point, or do you still think the concept isn't fully hitting yet? And if you check out the Rewind YouTube page closely, you can low-key start seeing which personalities are really driving engagement and numbers, which opens up a whole different conversation. Like I said in one of my earlier videos, don't think those talks about Flip and Ish potentially carrying or starting certain content ideas came out of nowhere. When Flip and Ish teamed up for Rewind episodes, the audience reaction was instantly loud, with people saying things like, "Yo, this feels classic," and their chemistry is actually crazy together. I'm just saying there's definitely a reason those conversations are happening now behind the scenes. Also, the Lord Jamar interview is doing numbers over there, and apparently there's an upcoming debate involving Lord Jamar and more guests that should be interesting to watch unfold. There's honestly a lot of solid content building up around that platform right now, and people are finally starting to notice. I originally created that separate channel because so many people kept trying to box me in by saying I could only cover Joe Budden-related content, which is funny because even on this same channel, I've covered people like Ebro Darden, Mandy B, Bridget Kelly, and several others, and those videos still performed really well too.